It's always the quiet moments after a party that feel the loudest. The music had finally died, leaving behind the ghost of bass thumping through the wooden deck. The backyard, once packed with laughter, wet footprints, and bodies draped over lawn chairs, now looked like the aftermath of a storm. Plastic cups floated in the pool. Someone's towel lay abandoned in the grass. Empty beer cans lined the edges of the hot tub like a forgotten offering. And then there was me. And Derek. Everyone else had gone inside. Some found beds, others found couches, or people to share them with. I had every intention of calling it a night, too. I even dried off and pulled my shirt halfway on before realizing I didn't want to go just yet. Something about the air, thick with chlorine and a hint of someone's cologne, held me in place. Derek sat alone in the bubbling water, arms stretched along the rim, head tilted back like he was trying to memorize the stars above us. "Still warm," he said without looking at me. "Yeah?" I hesitated at the edge, barefoot, holding my towel like a security blanket. "You leaving?" Was thinking about it. He finally looked over, eyes heavy-lidded and a little too clear for someone who'd been drinking. "Why think about it when you can just sit?" I glanced behind me. The house was glowing, music barely audible now, swallowed by walls and sleep. Inside, it would be quiet, safe, predictable. But here, out here, it was just him and me. Steam rising, silence pressing. So I dropped my towel, peeled off the shirt, and slipped back in. The heat hit immediately, wrapping around my legs and pulling a sigh from my chest before I could stop it. I settled across from him, the water lapping softly at my shoulders. For a while, neither of us spoke. I looked everywhere but at him, at the patio lights, at the moon, at the way my own fingers flexed under the water like they were reaching for something they couldn't name. Then he said it. "You and Connor. That over?" I blinked. "What?" He shrugged, like he hadn't just dropped a match in gasoline. "He left early. Didn't even say bye to you." I shifted. "Yeah, it's done." Derek nodded slowly. "Good." My brows lifted. "Good?" He met my gaze directly now. No smirk, no teasing lilt in his voice. "He wasn't right for you." I let out a laugh. It came out more bitter than I intended. "That's a hell of a thing to say when you barely know me. I've known you since junior year." "Group projects don't count as friendship." He smirked then. "No, but watching you every week in the library, always taking the same seat by the window, making those ugly-ass flashcards, yeah, that counts." My chest tightened. "You noticed that?" "I notice a lot of things." Silence again. Only this time, it wasn't comfortable, it was buzzing. Too full. I could feel his eyes on me, burning hotter than the jets of water between us. "You've changed," he said after a while. I raised an eyebrow. "Since junior year?" "Since you stopped pretending to wait for someone who never looked at you the way you wanted them to." I swallowed. "You think you know how I want to be looked at?" He didn't answer. Instead, he moved. Just a little, shifting forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on mine like he was giving me a chance to look away. I didn't. "Do you want to know why I didn't go inside?" he asked. I nodded. "Because you didn't." There it was. The air between us changed. The heat wasn't just from the water now. It pulsed, thick and tense, a slow build kind of thing that made it hard to breathe through. He moved again, closer this time. One arm trailing through the water, coming to rest near my leg but not touching. "I'm not trying to make things weird," he said. "I just don't feel like pretending tonight." I could hear my heartbeat now, louder than the water jets, louder than the wind stirring the empty pool floats. "So don't," I said quietly. Derek leaned in, just a little. "Just enough. I've wanted to do this for a while." "Do what?" "You'll see," he said. And then his fingers brushed my knee. Casual, but not accidental. When Derek's fingers brushed my knee, I didn't move. Not away. Not closer. Just stayed there. Half in disbelief, half afraid that if I acknowledged it, the moment would vanish. Like he'd laugh, pull back, and say he was just kidding. That it didn't mean anything. But he didn't pull back. His fingers lingered, resting lightly against the side of my knee under the water. I could barely feel the touch, but that only made it worse, or better. It was like my skin was tuned to him now, every nerve waiting, wondering what came next. "You okay?" he asked softly. I looked at him, not trusting myself to answer right away. "You're freaking out," he said, but not unkindly. There was something gentle in his voice now, something I hadn't expected. "You can tell me to stop," I swallowed. "I don't want you to." His hand moved slightly. Up. Just a few inches, fingertips brushing the top of my thigh now. Slow. Deliberate. And still, I didn't move. He leaned back a bit, like he was trying to read my face in the low light. His hair was wet from earlier, flattened slightly at the sides. There was a drop of water clinging to his collarbone, catching the faint light from the patio. I wanted to look away, but couldn't. "How long?" I asked suddenly, surprising myself. His brow furrowed. "How long what? You said you've wanted to do this for a while." He smiled, the smallest one I'd ever seen on him. Not cocky, not smug, just honest. A crack in the usual cool exterior. "Since that night at Jordan's," he said, "you were wearing that green hoodie and sitting alone on the porch. That was like a year ago." "Yeah," I blinked. "Why didn't you say anything?" he shrugged. "You were with Connor back then, and even if you weren't, I didn't think you saw me that way." I let out a breath. "I didn't know I did." That made him tilt his head just slightly. "But now?" I didn't answer with words. I just shifted forward, slowly, until our knees were touching under the water, his hand resting right between them. The bubbles masked most of the movement, but we both felt it. I saw the way his throat moved when he swallowed, the way his eyes flicked down to my lips for half a second before returning to meet my gaze. "Derek," I said quietly. "Yeah." I didn't know what I was about to say, something like, "This is crazy," or "I didn't expect this," or maybe just, "What happens now?" But none of it came out. Instead, he leaned in, just a little further, and I met him the rest of the way. The kiss wasn't some cinematic fireworks moment. It was tentative, careful, like we were both afraid to break it. But it was real. His lips were warm and soft, a little damp from the steam in the air. He kissed me like he'd been waiting a long time to do it, like he'd thought about it enough times to know exactly how he wanted it to feel. There was no rush, no fumbling, just the kind of quiet intensity that made my heart race faster than any kiss I'd ever had. When we pulled apart, he didn't say anything right away. Neither did I. We just looked at each other, breathing a little harder than before, steam swirling around us like fog. Then he chuckled, low and rough. "Okay, yeah, that wasn't just in my head." I laughed, a little breathless. "Not even close." He leaned his head back against the edge of the tub, eyes closing for a second. "Shit. What?" "I'm trying to play it cool, but that might have been the best kiss I've had in years," I smirked. "Seriously?" "I mean, I've had good ones, but not like that." I leaned back, too, mirroring him, the heat soaking into my skin. I could still feel the tingle of his lips on mine, like the afterglow of something I wasn't ready to let go of yet. "You said you didn't want to pretend tonight," I said. He nodded. "So what does that mean?" He opened his eyes again, looking at me. "It means I want to be honest, even if it's messy." "That's scary." "Yeah," he said, "but I'm still here." And he was, right there, across from me, in a hot tub surrounded by the remnants of a party, under the quiet hum of the stars, telling me the truth. I shifted a little closer again, until our legs were fully touching now. Skin against skin. My breath caught slightly, but I didn't stop. Derek reached out again, this time letting his hand settle on my thigh fully. He wasn't nervous anymore. Not hesitant, just present. "I like you," he said. I swallowed. "I like you too." He nodded like he already knew, like he'd been waiting for me to catch up to something he figured out a long time ago. Then his hand slid further, fingers brushing under the edge of my briefs in the water. Just enough to feel deliberate. I froze. Not from fear, but from how real it suddenly felt. We weren't just kissing. This was a step past that, a step into something deeper, more exposed. "You sure?" he asked, eyes locked on mine. I nodded. And this time, when he kissed me, it wasn't tentative. The second kiss was different. There was nothing careful about it. No testing the waters. No hesitation. Derek kissed me like we had already crossed a line, and there was no going back. His hand was still on my thigh under the water, warm and steady, and I could feel my pulse quickening with every second that passed. The bubbling of the hot tub faded into the background. All I could feel was him, his mouth, his breath, the way his chest pressed against mine as we shifted closer. We weren't sitting across from each other anymore. I don't even remember moving, but I was in his lap now, knees straddling him, the jets churning somewhere behind us like the last gasp of the party still echoing around the backyard. I pulled back just enough to breathe, our foreheads nearly touching. "This is insane," I whispered. Derek smiled, hands gripping my waist under the water. "Yeah, but I don't care." Neither did I. His lips found my neck, slow and deliberate, each kiss trailing heat in its wake. I tilted my head instinctively, giving him more room, my fingers curling against his shoulders. I felt like I'd left the real world the second I got back in this tub. Like time paused, and this bubble of steam and water was the only place that existed now. "You've got no idea how long I've wanted this," Derek murmured against my skin. "Try me." He laughed quietly, breath warm. "I used to imagine what it'd be like to kiss you every time you walked into the library with that dumbass reusable cup. I hated how good you looked when you were stressed." "You hated it?" "Because it made me want you more." I let out a breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "God, why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't know if you'd ever want me back." I pulled back enough to look at him. His eyes were darker now, not just from the dim light, but from something else. Something hungry and open, and a little afraid. "I do," I said. "I really do." That was all it took. His hands moved, slow at first, tracing up my back, then down again, fingers slipping under the waistband of my soaked underwear. The feel of his hands on bare skin sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the night air. I leaned in and kissed him again, harder this time. Less gentle, less thoughtful, more need. There was a different kind of rhythm now, our bodies pressing together, water sloshing gently with every shift. My hands found his chest, fingers splaying out across smooth skin, feeling the muscle underneath. He was warm, every part of him, and I couldn't stop touching him. He groaned softly into my mouth. "You're killing me." "Good." He bit my lip lightly, then kissed the corner of my mouth, my jaw, my throat. "You're not shy, huh? Not anymore." His hands slid lower, cupping me under the water, and I gasped, head tipping back, eyes fluttering shut. The sensation, the heat, the weight of him underneath me, it all hit at once. My fingers dug into his shoulders. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, mouth close to my ear. I nodded, breathless. Yeah, I'm just... Holy shit." He laughed again. "Yeah." We stayed like that for a while, moving together, wrapped up in heat and steam and touches that felt like they'd been held back for too long. It wasn't just physical. It was everything. The pressure, the tension that had built up in silence and glances and missed chances for years. It all poured out here, after midnight, with no one else around. Eventually the jets timed out and shut off, leaving only the soft sound of water and the distant hum of crickets. I rested my forehead against his, still straddling him, both of us catching our breath. "I can't believe that just happened," I said quietly. "Same." We stayed like that, unmoving, just breathing each other in. Eventually I felt him shift under me. "We should probably go inside," he said, "before we get pruny." "Too late," I said, holding up my wrinkled fingers. He smiled, hands still on my waist. "Come crash in my room." I raised an eyebrow. "That your way of asking me to stay the night?" He gave me a look. "That's my way of saying I don't want this to end the second we dry off." My chest tightened. Not in a bad way. It was the kind of tightness that felt like something new cracking open. Something I hadn't expected, but maybe needed more than I realized. "Okay," I said. "Yeah, I'll stay." He kissed me again. This time softer, slower, like he was already thinking about the next time. We got out of the hot tub slowly, like neither of us wanted to break whatever spell had been cast in the steam. The air outside was cooler than I remembered. Or maybe it was just the way my skin felt more exposed now, even though I was still technically covered. Our underwear clung to us like wet armor, but it didn't matter. Not after what had just happened. Derek handed me a towel from the pile someone had dumped by the patio door. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with that same small, private smile like he was letting me in on a joke only we understood. We dried off in relative silence, both of us a little breathless, still coming down from the high of it all. I noticed the way his hands moved over his chest, slow and casual, and the way his eyes kept flicking over to me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I was. I started, not really sure where I was going with it. I didn't expect this. He slung the towel around his neck. You didn't expect to get kissed by me or grind on me in a hot tub? I laughed, a little embarrassed. Both, honestly. Well, he said, walking toward the sliding glass door, you've got excellent taste. The house was quiet when we stepped inside. Lights were dimmed, except for a soft glow from the kitchen and the TV in the living room still playing something on mute. A couple of people were passed out on the couches, tangled in throw blankets and half-empty bags of chips. It smelled like beer and sunscreen and sleep. Derek led the way up the stairs. His room was at the end of the hall, the door still slightly cracked. He pushed it open and stepped inside, motioning for me to follow. The room was exactly what I expected. Simple, a little messy, but lived in. Clothes piled on a chair. A beat-up acoustic guitar in the corner. A candle on the nightstand that had clearly been burned more for ambiance than aroma. I stood awkwardly for a second, suddenly aware of how wet and cold my underwear was. You want some dry clothes? Derek asked, already rummaging through a drawer. Yeah, that'd be good. He tossed me a pair of shorts and a faded t-shirt. I didn't ask if they were clean. At this point, I honestly didn't care. He turned his back while I changed, and I did the same. There was something oddly sweet about that, like we both knew we'd just been wrapped around each other half naked and slippery, but this part, the post-hot tub reality, needed a little space. Once dressed, I sat down on the edge of his bed. He turned to face me, t-shirt half tucked, shorts hanging low on his hips. I meant what I said earlier, he said. Which part? That I've wanted this for a long time. I looked at him, trying to read his face. Then why now? He walked over and sat beside me, our thighs brushing. Because I'm tired of wondering. Tired of pretending I don't notice you. Tonight felt right. It did. I agreed. There was a pause. Not awkward, just full. Derek leaned back on his elbows. I used to convince myself I wasn't into guys. Really? Yeah, but that was bullshit. I just didn't want to deal with the mess of it. I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. I was scared, he said. Still kind of am. I looked at him. Of what? Of this not being real. Or being real and getting complicated. Of you waking up tomorrow and acting like it was a mistake. I chewed my lip. I'm not going to do that. He looked over, something in his eyes softening. You sure? I didn't answer right away. I took a breath and reached over, linking my fingers with his. His hand was warm and dry and familiar in a way that surprised me. I don't know what this is yet, I admitted, but I know I don't want to pretend it didn't happen, or that I don't want more. He squeezed my hand, just once. That was enough. We lay back on his bed, side by side, staring at the ceiling like two kids in a sleepover who just confessed something big. I feel like I should be freaking out, I said after a minute. Why? Because nothing about tonight was planned. It just happened. He turned his head toward me. Not everything good has to be planned. I'm starting to see that. There was a long stretch of silence. The good kind. And then, Derek whispered, stay here tonight. Okay? Like, actually sleep. I got that part, yeah. He smirked. Just making sure. I'm not great at subtle. You're better than you think. He turned off the lamp on the nightstand, plunging the room into soft darkness. We shifted under the covers, legs tangling naturally, arms brushing. He wrapped one around my waist and pulled me in without a word. I let myself melt into him, head resting against his chest, the rise and fall of his breath syncing with mine. I had no idea what tomorrow would look like, or the day after that. But I knew how tonight felt. and that was enough for now. I woke up to sunlight bleeding through the half-closed blinds, casting pale yellow streaks across the ceiling. For a second, I had no idea where I was. The bed wasn't mine, the ceiling fan wasn't mine, and the arm slung around my waist definitely wasn't mine. Then I remembered. The hot tub. The kiss. The heat of his hand on my thigh. The way we barely said a word as we got into bed last night, just touched and breathed, and let the silence say all the things we didn't have the energy to put into words. Derek's breath was warm against the back of my neck. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. His legs tangled with mine like we'd always slept that way. I stayed perfectly still, not wanting to wake him, not ready to break the spell of whatever this was. I closed my eyes again, just for a minute, and tried to memorize the weight of him against me. But of course my brain didn't let me rest. It started spinning with questions. What now? Was this just a one-night thing? A post-party, heat-of-the-moment decision we'd quietly sweep under the rug once everyone woke up and started making breakfast? I hated that my first instinct was to prepare for the worst, to brace for awkwardness. But then Derek stirred. His hand tightened a little on my waist, and his face nuzzled against my shoulder. "You awake?" he mumbled, voice rough with sleep. "Yeah." He was quiet for a second. "Good. I was worried I dreamed it." "You didn't?" he chuckled, low and warm. "That's good, 'cause that would have been a cruel joke." I rolled onto my back slowly, and he propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me with sleep-soft eyes and messy hair. "Hey," he said. "Hey." There was something different in the way he was looking at me now. Like he wasn't sure where to place me yet. Like he was trying to figure out what version of this moment we were going to live in. Casual? Regretful? Romantic? I decided to help him out. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "More than okay. Just trying to figure out what this means." "Me too." He laid back down beside me, arms folded behind his head. "So, was that a one-time thing?" The question hung between us like fog. I turned my head to look at him. "Do you want it to be?" "No," he said immediately. Then softer. "But I wasn't sure if you did." "I don't." He turned to face me. "So what does that mean?" I let out a slow breath. "I think it means we don't have to define it all today. But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen, and I don't want it to be the only time." He looked relieved. "Good. Because I was really hoping we'd make out again at some point." I laughed. "You're so romantic," he grinned. "You have no idea." The door creaked open suddenly, and both of us froze. A voice called out from the hallway. "Derek, you up?" It was Mason, his best friend, the one who owned the house we partied at last night. Derek sat up quickly, wiping his face with one hand. "Yeah, give me a sec." I looked around, suddenly very aware of how intimate the room looked. Our clothes on the floor, my shoes by the door, one of his shirts on me, his bed rumpled in a way that definitely didn't say, I slept alone. Derek turned back to me. "You want to sneak out, or—" I shook my head. "No, I don't want to sneak." He looked surprised for a moment, then smiled. "Okay." He got up, threw on a hoodie, and cracked the door open. "What's up?" "Breakfast run," Mason said. "We're heading to that diner on 6th. You in?" Derek glanced back at me. "Yeah, I'll come. Mind if I bring someone?" "Sure, the more the merrier," Mason said without a beat. "Wait, is it who I think it is?" Derek just smiled. "I'll meet you in the car." He shut the door and leaned back against it, exhaling like he'd just held his breath for an hour. "Okay," he said, laughing nervously. "So that's gonna spread like wildfire." I sat up, raking a hand through my hair. "You good with that?" He came over, kissed me quickly on the forehead, and said, "I think I am." We threw ourselves together quickly. Shoes on, hair finger-combed, pretending we didn't still smell faintly of chlorine and heat. But when we walked downstairs and stepped out into the sunlight, I realized something. I didn't care who saw us walk out of that room together. And neither did he. The diner on 6th had all the makings of a post-party pilgrimage spot. Sun-bleached menu boards, vinyl booths that squeaked when you sat down, and a waitress who could probably recite the breakfast specials in her sleep. Mason, Derek, and two of the other guys from the party had crammed into a booth near the window. I slid in next to Derek, still in his oversized shirt and borrowed shorts, feeling more exposed than I had any right to. Derek's thigh pressed against mine under the table. He didn't move. Mason raised an eyebrow and smirked like he was holding back a comment, but to his credit, he kept his mouth shut. For now. So, Mason said instead, "Who ordered the tub time machine last night?" Derek laughed. "That thing's been bubbling since like 8. I'm pretty sure it cured my hangover." "Or started your next one," Mason muttered. The waitress dropped off a carafe of coffee, and we all reached for it like it was sacred. I took a sip and leaned back in the booth, trying to settle into the new rhythm of the day, of whatever this was now. I could feel eyes flicking to me every so often, subtle but not subtle enough. The questions were coming. I just didn't know when. Derek nudged me with his knee. I looked over, and he mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded. It was a lie and not a lie. I was okay. Just still adjusting to the mental math of last night, plus sunlight, plus other people. Something about seeing your choices in daylight made everything feel more real. After breakfast, we all loitered outside the diner, squinting into the sun and deciding whether to head back to Mason's or call it a day. The 2 other guys bailed first, waving off the idea of another hangout in favor of naps and rehydration. That left me, Derek, and Mason by his car. Mason folded his arms and gave Derek a look. "So you're not going to say anything?" Derek rubbed the back of his neck. "About?" Mason gave me a glance, then back to Derek. "You know, the whole vibe shift. I mean, you 2 walked out this morning like you were cast in a Netflix teen drama." I flushed, looking down at my shoes. Derek didn't miss a beat. "Yeah," he said simply. "We're figuring it out." Mason raised his eyebrows, impressed. "Damn, all right." "That a problem?" Derek asked, his tone casual but guarded. Mason shook his head. "No, dude, not at all. I just didn't know you swung that way." "Guess I do," Derek said. Then, after a pause, "Or maybe I just swing this way." Mason grinned. "Cool. Just don't make out in the hot tub next time without inviting me." Derek rolled his eyes. "Bye, Mason." I snorted, and we headed to Derek's car. As soon as we shut the doors, the silence hit again. This time, not heavy, just thick with all the things we hadn't said yet. He pulled out of the lot and glanced over at me. "You sure you're good?" he asked again. "Yeah," I said. "I mean, this morning was kind of a lot, but I don't regret anything." He nodded, one hand on the wheel, the other resting between us. I watched his fingers for a moment, then slid my hand over his. His grip tightened around mine. "Do you want to hang out later?" he asked. "Not in a party setting, just us." "Yeah, I'd like that." "You can come by mine. My roommates are out of town," I smirked. "You trying to get me in your bed again?" he grinned. "No, not just that." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the windows down, warm wind rushing in. When he pulled into my place, he turned off the engine but didn't move right away. "I don't know what we're doing," he said, "but I want to keep doing it." I leaned in and kissed him, soft and slow. "Me too." He watched me as I got out of the car and walked up the steps to my apartment. I turned back before going inside and saw him still sitting there, smiling like he couldn't believe this was real. Truth was, neither could I. But it was. And I couldn't wait to see where it went next. I don't know what I expected when I showed up at Derek's apartment later that evening, but I definitely didn't expect him to answer the door holding a bowl of popcorn and wearing the exact same hoodie I had left at his place a few months ago, back when we were just casual friends who occasionally studied together and never touched. "You left this?" he said with a small grin, stepping aside to let me in. I brushed past him, feeling the warmth of his arm against mine, the kind of electric brush that would have meant nothing a week ago but now made my stomach do flips. "I didn't think you were the sentimental type," I said. "I'm not," he replied, "but it smelled like you." He said it so casually that it landed harder than he probably meant it to. My chest squeezed, and I smiled despite myself. The apartment was empty, quiet, clean but lived in. A blanket already draped across the couch, 2 glasses of something cold sweating on the coffee table. The kind of low-effort setup that still managed to feel intentional. "I figured we could chill," he said, dropping onto the couch and motioning for me to join him. "No pressure, just hang out." "No hot tub this time?" He shot me a look. Not unless you want to install one in my kitchen sink. I laughed and sank into the couch beside him. We sat close, but not quite touching. There was still that faint, pulsing uncertainty between us, like we were both waiting to see if last night had changed everything or just cracked the door open. 10 minutes into some mindless action movie, his hand brushed mine. Then again. And then, after what felt like a silent negotiation, he just laced our fingers together on the couch between us. We didn't talk much. But it wasn't the awkward silence of two people unsure of what to say. It was quieter, more comfortable. Like the pressure was gone now, replaced with the low thrum of something we didn't have to rush into. About halfway through the movie, he turned toward me. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Was last night your first time doing anything with a guy?" I nodded. "Yeah." He waited a second. "And?" I swallowed, turning my head to meet his eyes, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. His face softened. "Same." He leaned in, slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. Our lips met again, but this time there was no surprise. No rush. Just a quiet, steady confirmation that whatever this was, it was real. We pulled apart eventually, resting our foreheads together. "I feel like we're doing this all backwards," I said. "How so?" "We kissed before we ever even really talked about what we wanted." "I don't even know if you're seeing anyone." "I'm not," he said quickly. "Are you?" "Nope." He nodded once, like that settled it. Then he added, "I don't really care how we start. I just don't want to pretend this didn't happen." Me neither. We talked after that, about stupid things at first, like professors we hated, the worst assignments we'd had, and the time he broke a bone playing backyard football with his cousins. But slowly, the conversation shifted. He told me about the first time he realized he was into guys, how he buried it for years, dated girls, tried to ignore the part of him that was drawn to the same closeness, how lonely that felt sometimes. I told him how I never even questioned I liked girls, until one day I realized I was paying more attention to a guy in a study group than the textbook. How confusing that was. How I didn't know if it was curiosity or something more. Derek leaned back against the couch and looked at me for a long moment. "I'm not trying to be your gay awakening," he said, half smiling. "You're not," I said, "but you're something." He seemed to like that answer. As the night wore on, we ended up lying on the couch, his arm draped over my chest, my hand resting on his knee. We weren't even watching the movie anymore. We were just being something new. Something we hadn't dared name yet, but weren't afraid of anymore. A few days passed like that. Soft touches, long talks, the quiet comfort of falling asleep next to someone you didn't realize you'd been craving until it happened. We didn't rush into labeling anything. There were no dramatic declarations, no "what are we" conversations that ended with perfectly polished resolutions. But we showed up for each other. Derek texted me every morning, and I texted back. We met up after class. We hung out without needing a party or an excuse. And somewhere in there, we just started acting like we were together, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The shift wasn't loud. It was in the way his hand always found mine under the table at that cafe near campus, or how he'd drop a kiss on my cheek before parting ways at the library, even if we were surrounded by people. There were moments of tension, sure. Once, when one of his teammates made a dumb comment during a pickup game, Derek went quiet afterward, jaw clenched, pacing behind the gym after everyone left. I followed him out and asked if he was okay. He didn't answer right away, just sat down on the curb and rubbed his temples. "They said it like it was a joke," he muttered. "Like being into guys is a punchline." I sat next to him. "They don't know." He looked at me, sharp. "That shouldn't matter." I nodded. "I know." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, leaned into me, and let his head fall onto my shoulder. "I don't want to hide this." "You don't have to." We didn't say much else that night. But after that, he stopped flinching when our friends saw us together. Stopped adjusting the way he stood beside me, like he didn't want to be too obvious. He let it happen. Let us happen. Then, about 2 weeks after that night in the hot tub, we were lying in his bed, limbs tangled, half watching a movie we'd already seen twice. He looked over at me and said, "So, are we boyfriends now?" I blinked. "Wow, you really know how to build up to something." He grinned. "I just realized I've told 3 people I'm dating someone, and I've never actually asked you if you agree." I rolled onto my side, facing him. "You told people?" "Yeah." "Like who?" "Mason. My sister, my mom." "Your mom?" He shrugged. "She asked." I wasn't going to lie. I smiled, trying to hide how much that hit me, how real that made everything feel. So he said again, "Boyfriends?" I reached out and hooked my pinky around his. "Yeah, boyfriends." He grinned and kissed me, slow and certain. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking back to that party, to the heat of the water, the quiet tension between us, the way he looked at me like he'd already made the decision before I even got in the tub. Who knew everything would change after midnight? But it had, and the best part? It still felt like just the beginning.